All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. Today's presentation is Assessing Writing in the Age of AI. My name is Mahmoud Dahroug, and I'm an English instructor at ADNOC Technical Academy, where we use AI. So before we start, let's break our title down. Assessing Writing in the Age of AI. It looks like from the title, there are different topics involved: assessment itself, writing, and assessing writing, and all of that happening with the challenge of using AI. When the students use it, how does the assessment happen? This is what we're going to talk about. First, assessment. Basically, when we talk about assessment, we could mean different things. Like in our real life, when we say assessment, maybe we mean things related to products that we buy that we need to assess to know whether we can buy it, or maybe this is not fit for the purpose. Maybe I should get another product. And also we use it when we're talking about health. Like medical assessments, when you go and visit the doctor and the doctor asks for a medical assessment. And for employment, by the end of the year, you have an end of the year assessment. And also in finance, we have assessment of properties done by authorities and real estate companies. So the word assessment is used in our everyday life. But assessment also, from the dictionary, can mean a lot of things that are similar. For example, when we talk about assessment, we talk about the opinion or the judgment that we make about something after careful thought. So basically, the word assessment means whether we are satisfied with something or not, whether it is fit for purpose, or maybe I should something else. But when it comes to AI, we teachers use assessment to mean testing students to make a judgment about the knowledge and the ability and the progress that they have, so that I can walk with them and try to help them based on the assessment that I receive, that I give, and the feedback that I receive. So a more specialized dictionary, like for example, the Glossary of Education Reform, they mentioned that there are different methods for assessment and different tools. Some of these tools evaluate, measure, and document academic readiness for the students. And that, of course, helps us to gauge or to measure the academic readiness of the students, the learning progress, the skill acquisition, and of course, the students' needs, based on which I'll be able to help the students out. But when it comes to writing, the assessment of writing involves a lot of things. It involves, testing grammar. Throughout the year, it's not just one topic that I'm assessing. I'm assessing, maybe I taught them the present simple, present continuous, all the grammar lessons and previous grammar lessons from the past years. So I'm assessing grammar, assessing syntax, vocabulary that they learned, vocabulary maybe that they learned on their own. So I want to make sure, that they have all the knowledge needed that is typical of this SIFR level, for example. Let's say A2 level. Spelling, punctuation, coherence, cohesive ties that they use, the cohesion of the text, whether it is tied to each other or not, the organization of it, the structure of the text, and the critical thinking skills, and whether they are writing, original writing or not, and the register they use and the tone. So also, when we ask students to write, we ask them to cite evidence. Did they cite evidence or not? Did they cite the evidence correctly or not? So assessment of writing involves different things. So here, as you can see, this is, what we gauge student on. Okay. Also, we're supposed to add a fifth dimension, which is originality. Okay. So here, a lot of times when I'm teaching, I'm sure it happens to all educators, they ask the students, is this really yours? Sometimes, they get a writing written by a student, and then I feel there's something off about this writing. I feel this is not, how my student writes. I'm sure all of us, have been through this situation. So when this thing happens, How often do we ask this question? A lot of times. For me, it happens to me every time I assign a task. There would be one or two students, that I would feel their writing is not really their writing. So if I don't know, or if the student, writes something that is not really his or not really hers, so there would be a barrier between me and knowing all of the students, written. Like, for example, here we said we're supposed to know about the academic readiness and the learning progress and the skills acquisition and all of that. So if I don't know whether the students really wrote this thing or not, so I won't be able to gauge them properly. I won't be able to give them proper assessment. So here, what do we need to do? We need to remove that barrier. We need to have integrity. So should we really blame technology for that? When our students are all the time on their phones, sometimes they're hiding the phone, sometimes, they have stuff that will make them cheat or get, content that's not theirs, and then they would attribute it to themselves. So should we really blame technology for that because of the phones and the technology, or this thing has been happening for a long time? Well, ensuring integrity in the past and now. Let's just take a look at how teachers used to suffer, when they had a writing that they suspect that's not written by the student. So what did they used to do? We all remember, it's not in the very distant past. We had to guarantee that the task is written by the student. So we had challenges, and some of these challenges, required some solutions that we call now traditional. So some of these challenges, plagiarism from books, or maybe any written content. Sometimes the students would submit a wonderful piece of writing, but this wonderful piece of writing is not really his. Maybe he copied part of it or all of it from any written source. Could be from a book, could be from a magazine, could be from a friend. So what we call plagiarism. Also, if the student at home is being tutored by a parent, or he has a private tutor, so this kind of shadow education would affect me as a teacher. I won't be able to tell whether this student, cheated. How much did he get from that tutor? How much, did he write on his own? So that would be really a challenge. And also, ghostwriting and homework outsourcing. A lot of times, there were many websites, and also, before the websites, before the internet, students would just turn to somebody who can write. It could be another older student, or maybe a family member, or maybe somebody who can write well, and then they would even pay them money so they can write them the homework. So we don't know really whether this is written by a student or not, unless I know the student's writing. And of course, sometimes I would put the student at a disadvantage if he claims this is his and this turns out to be his. So there were some solutions, to these challenges, as educators in the past did. For example, in-class writing tasks. To avoid the cheating, teachers would give tasks to students that are administered in class. These tasks, the students will not take them home, so they won't have the chance to consult someone else. No, they would be in front of the teachers, and then the teacher maybe would monitor them, proctor them, if we may say, and then the teacher would make sure that students did not cheat, and all what's written on the paper is theirs. So this is happening under the watch, under the supervision of teacher. So by doing that, they will have limited access, to external help. So that's a very classic thing, doing all the work in class. Could be one solution. Also, still talking about traditional challenges, and one solution to one challenge is process-based assessment. Of course, if I ask the student to do one thing for me, just focusing on the final product, there's a bigger chance that the student, is going to get the final product, and then he won't go through all the process. How did he get to the final product? Maybe, as we said, he asked a friend, maybe, he copied part of it, maybe he copied most of it, maybe he copied the challenging parts. So we don't really know. That's why a good solution for that is to have a writing process, which is monitored by the teacher, okay, and submitted. Each one of them, like for example, here we've got five writing process. Each one should be submitted by the student and then, reviewed by the teacher, given feedback, and based on the feedback, the student would continue. It would be hard if the student, would be doing this with external help. So it would be really good to do it in a process so that, students would not just be taken aback by how hard the task is, or maybe by not knowing, so he just won't think about it, and then getting the final product from a friend or someone else. No, they would just go through a process, the pre-writing, for example, thinking, writing the drafts, first draft, second draft, third draft, revising, editing, and first publishing, and last thing publishing, and maybe posting this on the walls in class. So this is one solution that can work, which is dividing the task instead of a final product, just dividing it into smaller tasks. Each task is under the supervision of the teacher from task one till the final task. So that will ensure that this is not written by someone else, or he did not copy part or the whole writing from someone else. Also, still talking about past challenges, another solution to what we talked about is oral follow-up. For example, remember when we talked about, having a task and you suspect this task is not really the student's task, it's not, the student's submission, maybe, he got it from someone else. So the solution to that is just to do the classic, talk, which is, okay, so how did you come up with this? So can you please explain that? Can you justify the answer? So this follow-up questions, it's like, interviewing the students about what they write. So that would be very helpful in terms of avoiding copying, because if the student knows that he would be questioned about what he writes, he's not gonna copy that easily. He's going to think about it and maybe maybe make mistakes, because he's going to be discussed that with a teacher, and the teacher would be welcoming that, which is a very good thing, when we give feedback to students and they work based on the feedback they get, not just based on external help that they get, focusing only on the final product without interviewing students based on what they wrote. Next solution, another solution is peer review sessions. Sometimes students, maybe it's a psychological thing, when they write, they don't want to go to the teacher for feedback. Some students, would feel shy and say, well, I want to share it with someone who looks like me, who's my age. So maybe I'm going to share my writing with another classmate. Okay, so because they're comfortable talking to each other, maybe in the playground, maybe even if they're adults, so they are at a lower level, so they won't feel shy discussing in front of a teacher, and then the teacher would correct them. So maybe they would just give feedback to each other. So that's a very good strategy when doing peer review. So students would not be afraid to make mistakes. Maybe they're gonna rate and make mistakes because they know that their peers also will make mistakes, and then they're going to exchange ideas. How did you write that? How should I write it better? Can you give me a piece of advice? I'm going to help you with that. So this collaboration would make it work best, and they will not be shocked, when they are in front of the class talking to the teacher, and then the teacher gives them feedback. Maybe they're embarrassed. So peer review, that would be really good. And that would, of course, avoid copying from external source. Also, another solution is writing on familiar topics. I mean, teachers, when they assign topics, they should be careful. We as teachers, we need to be careful what kind of topics we assign. We should not assign topics that students have no idea what these topics are. For example, topic like euthanasia or gun control or legislation or any of these difficult topics, even difficult for adults to talk about or to write about. So if I just ask a student to write about, for example, euthanasia, so he doesn't know anything about it. He was going to research and maybe he's going to copy parts of it because it's not happening in the circle of the student, or it's not happening, around the student. These are not topics that are familiar to the student. So because they're not familiar, so it's very likely that he's going to get help from outside. That's why maybe we should ask students to write about topics. They are not, overly simplistic, but maybe topics that students are familiar with. Could be family, could be the best topic that I love, is video games, because everybody, especially young people, are video gamers. So your favorite video game, school, could be family, could be any topics that students are really familiar with. So when they're familiar with the topic, they'll be happy to talk about it because this is part of them. They're going to talk about something that that represents them, other than talking about something that is they know nothing about. Also, another thing is, which is also a classic, handwritten submissions. I know that these days, most of the tests, Cambridge tests, TOEFL tests, and standardized tests and school tests are happening on the computer. They're computer-based tests. There's no way, you'd be really writing and submitting your writing. Maybe you can take notes. However, in the past, when they didn't have computers or the test was written task, the chance of the students getting external help would be very minimal, since they're writing. So maybe it would be good if students write, and when they write, that on a piece of paper, they won't be able to get external help unless they have electronics on them. In the past, they didn't have that, so, or they have little of that. So of course, that worked in the past. Also, something very important, we as teachers, we can tell. If I have, a group of 20 students, I can tell, okay, Ahmed, he can write this. Muhammad, maybe, he wrote it, maybe not, but, at the end of the day, I know my students. So I know which student would write which thing, okay? So sometimes it happens in my class, someone would write something, and then they would say, it's mine, and they write their name on it, but I'm 100% sure this is not theirs. Okay, I would tell them, I would be very happy to correct your mistakes, since it's a human to err. It's not a bad thing. Me as a teacher, I make mistakes. Maybe I'm making mistakes now. So it's always good to be familiar with the students, because if you're not familiar with the students, you won't be able to tell, who wrote what. And it's very important if we know our students and know their rating, and based on that we'd be able to help. And of course it depends on the class size, because if we have a big class, it would be hard for us to know everybody. Maybe it would happen if we have the same students for many years, but it's not a likely scenario. So sometimes you have a group of students for one semester, but it would be really good if I know them as much as I can. Maybe I should have access to previous writing. Maybe I should let them write more. I should always go back to the writing and compare versions, so I see whether the student is developing or not. And this is something that was happening in the past, and that was the past. Now, how about ensuring integrity and comparing this in the present and the past? So assessing students in the age of AI, of course, it's really difficult. What makes it difficult? Because we presented with big challenges, with the advent of AI. For example, AI gives us instant content generation. So imagine the topics that I was talking about, the big topics like gun control and euthanasia, and all of these is big topics. If you just type a word, it just generates maybe a whole book about it. So because of how fast that happens, so this tools like ChatGPT, for example, of course, there are hundreds of tools. There's even a website called, there's an AI for that, which is updated regularly, that tells us, if there's a new AI tool that can do something, and some of them are related to education and students misusing them. So when talking about misusing AI, instant content generation, students, if they have access to the AI, Unfortunately, they use it to generate text and claim it as theirs. So maybe they would submit something that they don't understand it, and they would end up, being corrected. So that's the instant content generation. And another thing also that happens is that students would tell AI to humanize, the text to make it, the same language as a student would write. So of course, that's a whole different challenge. And the lack of original voice. Imagine when the students, just keep writing about a topic, it makes it hard to assess true writing ability because, it was submitted by a student. And let's say I'm not familiar with that student, he's a new student. So I won't be able, to assess that, to effectively assess this writing. So of course that would hurt students' writing, and it would hurt me as a teacher, because as a teacher I need to help people. I won't be able to help since I don't get the right, the right writing written by a student. Okay, if I would be happy as a teacher, if I have a piece of writing that has tons of mistakes, and I would help the student with it. However, if I get a piece of writing that's not the student, so of course that's a misuse of writing tools like AI writing tools. And of course, because of the lack of originality, I won't be able to tell, and I won't be able to effectively assess. Also, the bypassing of the learning process. Remember the learning process we talked about, the drafting, the planning, first draft, pre-writing, post-writing, posting, getting feedback, after each stage. I won't be able to do that because, as a teacher, I didn't comment on that. I just focused on, the final product. And also, for the students, they won't be able to know the process. Some students, they would think, okay, so a teacher wants a piece of writing. Here is my piece of writing. I'm done. Of course, this is not right. Students need to focus on each step of the way. So they know that everything, involves thinking, critical thinking, moving from A to B, then C, then D, and all of that before they just, give the final writing, the Z, for example. Okay. So also, there's something related to a gray zone. So students sometimes think that they're doing the right thing. Okay, now it's like I'm Googling. Okay, I don't know the answer for this, so I'm Googling it. Yeah, we used to hear that a lot. Now I don't know the answer for this, so I'm going to ChatGPT it, or I'm going to use an AI tool for it. I'm just learning. It's ethical, of course. We should let the students know that if they write something and they claim as theirs, that raises some ethical questions, because this should be written by the students themselves, not a third party. Another thing is bypassing the learning process. We talked about this. Now, these are the challenges, okay, of using AI. So also there's a big difficulty in detecting AI use, because as a teacher, for me to detect the AI, it's getting harder and harder and harder. Given that there are some, I call them devilish tools, like this tool, Humanize It. Okay, and even without tools, prompting without tools, just going to any AI tool and then writing in the prompt, just act as if you are an A1 student, or make mistakes on purpose. So deliberate error generation, it happened to me this semester, that the student, he just gave me a piece of writing, and I told him, hey, this is not yours. This, 100% not yours. Number one, you do not say you was. So I'm sure, he all the time said you were. There's no way he would write you was different times, in the writing, or just use, subject verb agreement in a way that he doesn't use, normally. So the deliberate error generation, sometimes I would be able to tell since I'm familiar with my student, and sometimes I won't be able to tell since, a student would even get smarter than that, and then look for errors that would pass my radar, as they would say. Also, when I just talk to a student, I really hate to do it and tell the student, this is not yours. Some students are really high achievers and they can write maybe better than ChatGPT. But if I tell them, that this is not yours, maybe this is theirs. So that will also raise some ethical questions. So for me as a teacher, there's a difficulty detecting AI use. Is this AI, not AI? So again, that is confusing for me even as a teacher. So and a teacher who's familiar with the students, because now students make deliberate mistakes. Now, also another challenge nowadays is the ubiquity of AI tools. Imagine all the electronic devices that we have, they have AI tools, starting from the laptops that the students take their tests on, to their phones, to the tablets, to the smartwatches, because it's omnipresent, because it is all around them. It would be hard to stop them from using it because it's even on the device that they're using to take the test. So, okay, so now, Mahmoud, you're saying that it's doom and gloom. There are no solutions. You kept, relishing the memories of the past, and you said, that it was really good, in the past, people used to do that and this, educators used to follow these, strategies. How about now? Is there a way, we can stop our students, from using AI, or at least, to deal with the AI use? So I would just, talk about this old but gold. What do I mean by old but gold? I mean, all what I mentioned, if you can just copy it from all the strategies that we mentioned, like for example, when I talked about the writing processes, like pre-writing, drafting, revising, we can also do that, nowadays. It's not something of the past. No, we can do it. And, when students just submit work electronically, I can just give them, it's still electronic, but it's broken down into smaller tasks. So I would give them pre-writing task, like it's a task one. So one, 1, 2, 1, 3. So again, I would divide the big task into smaller tasks. Also, I will interview them the same way that I did in the past. So how did you do that? Can you explain? Can you justify? And also, I would give them topics that they are familiar with. I would just ask them to talk about their favorite school subject. I would ask them to talk about their favorite food. Or maybe I would just go a level higher and ask them to talk about things that could be not impossible to write about, but could be, a higher level, higher order thinking. It needs some critical skills, but that would be, topics that they are familiar or near familiar with, not something that they know nothing about, as the topics that I mentioned before. In class topics. Inside the class itself, if I ask them to do work at home, if I ask them to do it in front of me, maybe I would just have the old school monitoring, and then maybe look at their devices and whether they're using a different tool than the tool that I'm asking them to use. So that would be it. Also, as a teacher, I need to familiarize myself with the students. I know it could be a challenge, especially if I have a new group. So maybe I should ask the previous teacher from even before day one. Maybe I should have access to their previous tests. Maybe I should have access to their entry tests. Any thing that would make me know the students more. And with the passage of time, I get to know them more. So I would be able to tell, this is his, this is not his, this is hers, this is not hers. And then, based on that, I would just be able to help. Okay, and the thing that just appeared here, the safe exam browser. Using a safe exam browser, of course, will make the students not leave the browser that they're supposed to take the test on. However, also this comes with challenges, because sometimes the students would know the pin. I'll make sure that I change the pin all the time after each session, so that they won't leave the browser, and maybe just let them do tests or assessments on computer that's not theirs. Because if you have your own computer, maybe you're just going to have tools that are added to it, that will help you, pass this firewall of the safe exam browser. So this is something that I recommend doing. Well, maybe we can end with this conclusion. AI is here to stay. So adaptation is essential. I cannot say, I cannot, AI is not going to help me. AI, is a devil. No, AI is there. Maybe I should let them do the tasks as the tasks that I mentioned, broken down using AI. I can let them, chat with the AI. Okay, maybe I can let them, get AI feedback, and then, give feedback on the feedback given from the AI. So I can integrate AI into teaching as well. So it's here to stay. I have to face it, and I have to integrate it as a teacher. Also, assessment must evolve to ensure fairness and originality. The tests also should not be tests from the past. No, it should, instead of asking for a final product, it should be, asking for a process, and it should be evolving and involving the use of technology. Educators have a role in guiding ethical and effective use of AI. Of course, I should be talking to the students. It's not really help if you get help from AI. It's cheating. There's a line between this. We have to draw a line. This is right. This is not right. Otherwise, I would risk, getting things that are not written by theirs and affecting them, and affecting their learning negatively, of course. And as an educator, I should not resist change. I should know my students, and I should be able to help them in every step of the way. Thank you so